Hello students, hope you are as good as always. You are watching Social by Kumar. Study smart, think smart, Kumar sir के साथ. Just like every video lecture kids, before we begin another amazing and wonderful journey together, kindly click on the subscribe, like and bell buttons on your screen, and don't forget to share this video to your friends and cousins so that knowledge reaches everyone. Make sure to press the bell icon, students, to get instant updates whenever a new video is uploaded. Hitler. Who was Hitler? Who was this man? Was he the most cruel and most powerful dictator? No. He was Germany's Messiah. What? The one who showed Europe that they had terribly done wrong to Germany. And so, you messed with the wrong man after World War I, or the man whose suicide, even after Germany's defeat, left behind such a fear that the world would remain terrified that another Hitler might rise again someday. Sir, what a powerful introduction of Hitler. Yes, students, today we are going to talk about a man, a name written in world history in the most controversial, most terrifying, yet in some ways most powerful and even inspirational manner. Adolf Hitler. Kids, this chapter is very close to my heart. I would like to begin with a few lines. Listen carefully because we will discuss their meaning too. Only the one who wins the war receives praise, but if humanity loses, everyone suffers. History isn't just about kings and kingdoms, it's a mirror showing us the mistakes we must never repeat. Beautifully said, sir. Thank you, kids. Now, who would like to explain its meaning? Sir, it means that winning a war doesn't make anyone great, because if humanity loses, then every victory becomes meaningless. Sir, it also means that history doesn't just tell us about kings and empires, it tells us when and where humanity made its biggest mistakes. Absolutely right, kids. Bravo. Now, let me ask you a question. If a leader comes along who convinces people that an entire community is their enemy, what do you think will happen? Sir, people will start following that leader blindly, and soon that hatred will begin to feel real, which can cause great destruction. Exactly, my child. That's why it's so important for us to study Nazism and the rise of Hitler, because Hitler trapped the people of Germany in a mindset where victory mattered, but humanity lost. So students, today we are going to begin a very interesting and important journey, the story of Nazism and the rise of Hitler. This chapter isn't just about Germany, it's also a warning to the world. When a society follows a leader blindly, the result can be unimaginable and destructive. Destruction? I love destruction, sir. Sir, all the teachers are scared of our classroom destruction, and so we are. Kids, not that kind of destruction. I'm talking about the destruction when an entire country goes to war. In fact, the whole world becomes trapped in it. A destruction so massive that millions die. People lose food, shelter and jobs. Families are torn apart, and every night people sleep not knowing if they will even see the next sunrise. That kind of destruction, kids. Sir, that sounds like a very violent situation. Exactly, beta. And children, our world has already witnessed such destruction. Not once, but twice in the two world wars. In the first, Hitler faced the heat, and in the second, he made the world face it. Oh, so sir, this chapter is only about Hitler? Not just Hitler, my dear. In this chapter, we will understand much more. Here's the sequence we'll be following. First World War and post-war Germany. How Germany lost and how the Treaty of Versailles broke its back. The Weimar Republic, or we also call it as Weimar Republic, Germany's new democracy and why people disliked it. The rise of Hitler, from an ordinary soldier to the Führer, the dictator of Germany. Nazi ideology, the ideals of racial superiority, hatred towards Jews, anti-Semitism, and how propaganda fooled the masses. Role of youth and education, how children were brainwashed through uniforms, oaths, and Hitler youth organizations. Women in Nazi Germany, how their role was reduced to childbirth and household work. Propaganda and terror, use of posters, rallies, media, and fear to control people. Second World War and the Holocaust, how millions of Jews and other undesirable people were systematically killed. Sir, that means this chapter is just not about Hitler. It's all about all of the Germany, and it's also a warning for the future. Exactly right, my child. This chapter teaches us that if we blindly follow hatred and stereotypes, then democracy and humanity both are at risk. History repeats itself, but only for those who refuse to learn from it. So children, always question, always understand, and always keep humanity above everything else. Yes, sir. Childhood is meant for toys and play, but imagine when an 11-year-old boy lives under the shadow of death and fear. That's not childhood anymore. It becomes a living wound. Children, today I am going to tell you the story of a little German boy, Helmuth. This is the story of 1945 when the Second World War was about to end. Sir, an 11-year-old boy, what happened to him? Helmuth was lying on his bed one night when he overheard his parents talking. His father, who was a doctor, said to his mother, "Has the time come when I should end my family's life? Or should I only end my own?" Sir, why would his father think like that? He was terrified kid. He feared that the allies, the countries that fought against Hitler, would now do to them what the Nazis had done to the Jews and the disabled. The fear of revenge broke him completely from within. Sir, what did his father do then? The next day, he took his family to the forest. They sang old childhood songs together as if it was their last happy moment. When they returned home, he went to his room and shot himself. He ended his life. Oh no! What about Helmuth then? Helmuth saw his father's blood-soaked uniform burning in the fireplace. Children, that scene was so traumatic, so deeply disturbing that for the next 9 years he refused to eat home-cooked food. He believed his mother would poison him the next. Sir, that's so tragic, so wrong. What then happened to Helmuth? Yes, my child, that was just one story, Helmuth's story. But think, how many families must have faced the same fate in that era? War doesn't just kill people on the battlefield, it poisons childhood, innocence, and entire lives too. Very true, sir. We can really feel it. Now, students, let's try to understand what exactly was Nazism and why did people like Helmuth's father get so scared that they ended their own lives. Sir, but Helmuth's father was a supporter of Hitler, right? Then why did he want to kill his family? Yes, great question, beta. Helmuth may not have understood everything, but his father was indeed a Nazi supporter. He believed in Hitler's ideas. Sir, was Nazism just about following Hitler's actions, or was it something more? Nazism was not just about Hitler's individual acts, bachcho. It was a system, a whole structure of ideas that shaped the world and politics of that time. It included hatred towards Jews and other minorities, the goal to make Germany a mighty world power, and the ambition to dominate all of Europe. Sir, then what exactly was Helmuth's father afraid of? Students, this was in 1945 when Germany had surrendered to the Allies. People feared that the horrific crimes Nazis had committed, mass killings, tortures, and genocides, the Allies would now take revenge in equally the same manner or in more brutal ways. That's why even Hitler and his propaganda minister Goebbels, that you can see on the screen, committed suicide in April 1945 inside the Berlin bunker. But you can see this in figure 1 as on your screens. Hitler in the center, Goebbels on the left. Sir, what do we mean by crimes against humanity? Good question. These are actions committed against all of humanity like mass killings, genocide. The systematic killing of a community is called as a genocide, and torture of innocent civilians. To deliver justice, the Nuremberg Tribunal, an international military court, was set up to punish Nazi war criminals. Sir, so this entire system became dangerous because of one reason. Exactly, beta. When power and hatred are used systematically and morality is ignored, society and people become extremely dangerous, not just to others, but to themselves. History doesn't show just to show us the past. It is a warning that if we forget humanity and morality, we might face the same fate again. Students, now let us understand what Germany did during the Second World War and why the world took such intense action against its crimes. On your screen, you can see the Allies in the blue box, that means England and France. In 1941, they were joined by the USSR and the USA. Together, they fought against the Axis powers, that is, Germany under Hitler and his allies Italy and Japan during World War II. Sir, I have heard that something very terrible happened to the Jews and some other groups. Is that true? Yes, my child. Germany waged a genocidal war, a systematic mass killing. Innocent civilians were murdered. Just listen carefully to the numbers, kids. 6 million Jews, that is 60 lakh human beings, not just 60 or 600. Kids, it is 60 lakh human beings. And that were all Jews. 2 lakh gypsies of the Roma community. 1 million Polish civilians means 10 lakh of Polish people. 70,000 their own Germans who were mentally or physically disabled. Even his own people, Hitler did not spare them. And many political opponents, anyone who stood in his way, was destroyed. Sir, how were these people killed? Students, the Nazis used unprecedented methods, things that never seen in the human history. The most infamous were the gas chambers. The biggest killing centers were Auschwitz with Treblinka, where people were murdered using poisonous gases. Sir, what happened to these criminals later? After the war, the Nuremberg Tribunal, an international court, was set up. Only 11 leading Nazis were sentenced to death. Many others got life imprisonment. But children, compared to their crimes, these punishments were far too small. Truly, sir, and sir, they did such terrible things, yet only 11 were given the death sentence. Why not all? Because the Allies didn't want to impose the same harsh measures on Germany that they had done before after World War I. They believed that the rise of Nazi Germany had in some way been fueled by the painful experience and humiliation Germany faced after the First World War. So you mean the collapse of the economy and national humiliation? Exactly, kid. Germany's economy had collapsed. Unemployment was way too high, and the Treaty of Versailles had brought national shame. All these factors together created a fertile ground for the rise of Nazis. History, children, is like a mirror. It tells us if we ignore injustice and hatred, tragedy will repeat itself, and that can create another Hitler. someone so powerful that stopping him becomes almost impossible. When old politics collapse, new hopes are born. But when those hopes are tied with pain and shame, every new dream carries a shadow of fear. Students, now we'll talk about the Weimar Republic, or you can also call as Weimar Republic, which was Germany's first modern democratic government. Sir, what was Germany like before this? Before this, Germany was a very powerful empire in the early 20th century. During World War I, 1914 to 1918, Germany allied with Austria and fought against the allies England, France, and Russia. Initially, Germany captured parts of France and Belgium. Then how did Germany lose, sir? Good question, beta. When United States entered the war in 1917, the strength of the allies increased greatly. By November 1918, Germany was forced to surrender. The emperor abdicated. That means he gave up his throne. And this gave parliamentary parties a chance to form a new democratic government. And that's when the Weimar Republic was born, sir. Absolutely. Bravo. The National Assembly met at Weimar and drafted a democratic constitution. It had a federal structure and members of the Reichstag, that is parliament, were elected through universal voting, including women, for the first time. But sir, why didn't people like it then? Because Germany had just lost the war and was forced to accept the Treaty of Versailles, a treaty that was supposed to bring peace but instead brought humiliation. Screen, kids, you can see what Germany lost. All its overseas colonies, 10% of its population and 13% of its territories. You can see on the screen, bachcho. 75% of its iron and 26% of its coal went to France, Poland, Denmark and Lithuania. Demilitarization. Their army was reduced to almost nothing. The war guilt clause. Germany had to take full blame for the war and had to pay 6 billion pounds. Kids, it's not million, it's billion in that era, and that also 6 billion pounds as compensation. That was too huge. Students, it's actually much for a defeated country, trust me. Yes sir, we can actually gauge that. Good. The resource-rich Rhineland was also placed under the Allied control throughout the 1920s. All these harsh conditions were accepted and signed by the Weimar Republic itself. So people thought that the Weimar Republic accepted an even bigger defeat, right sir? And then would have blamed them for all the suffering. Exactly, student. Every German blamed the Weimar Republic for the loss and the shame of Versailles. Since the treaty was signed in November, they mockingly called its leaders the November criminals. This made democracy weak and unstable, and people started looking towards extreme leaders for hope. When a nation loses its pride and honor, even the strongest democracy becomes fragile. That's the lesson we must learn from Weimar Republic. Children, now we will understand how World War I affected Europe and Germany. The impact wasn't just on the battlefield, it was psychological and financially devastating. Sir, you mean people in Europe were facing serious money problems? Exactly, students. Before the war, Europe was a continent of creditors. It lent money to others. But after the war, it became a continent of debtors. It had to borrow. And the newly formed Weimar Republic had to carry the burden of the old empire's mistakes. Sir, we understand people were angry with Weimar Republic, but did they also hate its supporters? Yes, bacho. Because of the Republic's supporters, mainly socialists, Catholics and Democrats, became the target of conservative nationalist circles. They too were mocked as November criminals. Sir, did the war also affect soldiers and politics? Absolutely. The First World War left a deep mark on both society and politics. Soldiers were glorified above civilians. Politicians told men to be strong, aggressive, and masculine. The media glorified trench life. Though the reality was horrific, soldiers lived among rats, near dead bodies, breathing poisonous gases, and facing constant shelling. They had no proper food or medicine even. Even the breathing was dangerous. So, sir, there was a huge difference between what people saw and what was real. Exactly, kids. War propaganda and national honor were glorified, and people started supporting conservative dictatorships. Democracy was still new and fragile, and the instability of interwar Europe made it hard for democracy to survive. People began to believe that only a strong leader could save them, and that maybe monarchy had been better than this weak democracy. When both money and power are lost, extreme ideas begin to take over life, and the politics and economy of a nation begin to shake students. Now, let us understand the impact of political radicalism and the economic crisis during the early years of the Weimar Republic. Sir, what does political radicalism mean? Good question. Political radicalism means extreme political ideas, groups, or people who want quick, total, and revolutionary change, just like the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia, which we learned already in chapter 2, the same way. Sir, which groups were involved? One major group was the Spartacist League. You can see in this figure, bachcho, on your screen, soldiers and workers formed Soviet workers' councils and made the streets of Berlin their base. Political demonstrations became very common. Socialists, Democrats, and Catholics came together at Weimar to form a democratic republic. The Weimar Republic crushed the uprising with the help of the Free Corps, a group of war veterans. The remaining Spartacists later formed the Communist Party of Germany. Sir, how did this affect the rise of Hitler? Students, this created deep divisions. Communists and socialists became enemies, and instead of fighting Hitler together, they kept fighting each other. Meanwhile, both revolutionaries and militant nationalists wanted radical and long-term solutions. Now let's talk about the economic crisis of 1923. Germany had fought the First World War mostly on loans and now had to pay war reparations in gold. Sir, what problem did that cause? Students, you know every country's strength lies in its gold reserves. Because of these payments, Germany's gold got exhausted and resources became scarce. In 1923, Germany refused to pay further. In response, France occupied Germany's biggest industrial area, the Ruhr, and started taking all of its coal. Germany responded with passive resistance, that means disobeying laws non-violently, and started printing huge amounts of paper money. The result was hyperinflation. Prices skyrocketed. When too much money floods the market, its value drops. If you could buy something for 10 marks, that is the currency of Germany at that time, now you might need 100 marks for it. Sir, can you explain this process again? Sure, kid. When a government keeps printing more and more money, the supply of money increases, but the supply of goods and services doesn't. So, the value of money keeps falling, the price of everything keeps rising. Example, earlier one loaf of bread cost 1 mark. Now it could cost 100 marks or even more. When this process becomes rapid and uncontrollable, it's called as hyperinflation. Prices rise day by day. People's money loses all buying power. It loses all buying power. In 1923, 1 US dollar equals to 4.2 trillion German marks. Now we are not talking even about billion, we are talking about trillion. 4.2 trillion German marks equal to just 1 US dollar. My God, sir, that much? Yes, Look at these number, kids. April, 1 US dollar was equal to 24,000 marks. Just within the next 2 months, 1 US dollar become equal to 3,53,000 marks. By the very next month, August, there was a huge inflation. Now 1 US dollar stands equals to 46,21,000 marks, 4.6 million. And by December, that is from April to December, within 8 months, 1 US dollar was equal to 98.8 million. Sir, does that mean people carried bags full of money just to buy one loaf of bread? Exactly, beta. You are absolutely correct. You can see this in the image on the screen, figure 4. People carrying bundles of notes to buy simple food. This picture created worldwide sympathy for Germany. Eventually, the Americans intervened and brought in the WWII plan, which made the reparation terms easier for Germany. Students, now let's talk about the economic depression of 1929 to 1932, which affected Germany and the entire world. Sir, after the WWII plan, Germany had become stable, right? Then how did this economic depression happen? Good question, beta. Yes, stability had returned, but just like a house built on sand that eventually has to collapse. This stability too had a very weak foundation. Germany's industrial recovery and investments were almost entirely dependent on short-term loans from USA, which kept money flowing into Germany. Then where did the problem begin, sir? In 1929, kid, the Wall Street crashed. The collapse of the world's biggest stock exchange in USA. People panicked, and in one single day they rushed to withdraw their investments. Around 13 million shares, 13 million shares were sold in panic, and that's how the Great Economic Depression began. Sir, how did this affect Germany? Students, Germany was the worst hit. The US stopped giving loans and started demanding immediate repayments. The results were devastating. By 1932, industrial production fell to 40% of what it had been in 1929. Germany went back by years. 6 million people again, that is 60 lakh, became unemployed. People sat on the streets holding placards saying willing to do any work. Even people from good families joined these queues. Youths with no jobs spent their days playing cards, sitting on street corners, or standing in long employment queues. Crime increased and despair, that is, the loss of hope, became widespread. Sir, so not just workers, even other sections must have suffered, right? Absolutely, my child. The middle class and pensioners lost their savings as the currency collapsed. Small businessmen, self-employed workers, and retailers were ruined. Mothers couldn't even provide milk and food to their children. Despair grew everywhere. The fear of proletarianization spread, meaning the middle class feared they might soon become like the working class or completely unemployed. Sir, what was the political situation like at that time? The Weimar Republic was fragile, kids. Because of proportional representation, it was nearly impossible for any party to get a majority. Sir, can you please explain this system also in detail? Of course, my child. In this system, the percentage of votes a party receives directly translates into the percentage of seats it gets in parliament. So if party A gets 30% votes, it will have 30% of the seats. Unlike in countries like India, where the winner takes all, here no party could rule alone because votes were split among many. So sir, if no single party had a majority, then 2-3 parties must have joined hands to form a government, right? Exactly, beta. That is called a coalition government. It means everyone shares a little power, but no single party can rule completely. Then, sir, the government must have struggled to make decisions also. Correct. And that became a huge problem here. They kept trying and experimenting, but every strategy failed. Wow, sir, you explained this difficult topic so well. I had a huge problem. No problem, child. Once you understand the concept, the entire chapter becomes very easy. Now, back to the point, the fragility of the Weimar Republic. Proportional representation made majority rule impossible. Under Article 48, the president could impose emergency rule and suspend civil rights. This article was used so frequently that the Republic saw 20 different cabinets in just 14 years. That's an average of only 239 days per government. Sir, does that mean people stopped trusting democracy? Exactly. People lost faith in the parliamentary system. They saw a government that kept changing and couldn't solve their problems. Many began to believe that the rule of a king was far better and more stable. They started hoping for a strong leader, someone decisive, and that's when Hitler's rise began. When one person's voice and passion touch the pain of the people, he stops being just a leader, he becomes a symbol. And that's exactly what we will now understand, students. How Hitler connected with the Germans and rose to power. Sir, what was Hitler's background? Hitler was born in 1889 in Austria. He lived in poverty during his youth. He joined the army in World War I, served as a messenger and corporal, and won medals for bravery. But, sir, Germany lost the war anyway, didn't it? Yes, my child. Even after so much bravery, Germany's defeat and especially the Treaty of Versailles made millions of Germans, including Hitler, furious. In 1919, he joined the German Workers' Party and later took control of it, renaming it the Nazi Party. Sir, how did he try to take power? In 1923, he planned to seize Bavaria and then march to Berlin, but the attempt failed. He was arrested and charged with treason. Sir, such a big crime, how was he released so soon? Very good question, beta. The judges at that time were actually very sympathetic to the right-wing nationalists. They admired Hitler's patriotic views. In court, Hitler used his trial as a stage. He blamed the Weimar government and impressed everyone with his fiery speeches. The court showed leniency, sentencing him to 5 years, but he served only 1 year because of good behavior and political pressure. When he came out of jail, his fame exploded. People began to see him as a true nationalist, someone who thought for Germany. Sir, so after that, the Nazi party must have become very strong. Yes, but the real boost came after the Great Depression of 1929. Banks collapsed, businesses shut down, unemployment soared, and the middle class felt insecure. In 1928, the Nazi party had 2.6% votes, but by 1932, after the depression, it jumped to 37% of votes, making it the Germany's largest party. Sir, how did Hitler impress so many people? What was so special about his speeches? Ah, children, Hitler was a very powerful speaker. His words and passion could move people emotionally. His speeches made big promises. Promise 1, to make Germany strong again, end the injustice of Versailles, and restore national pride. Promise 2, to create jobs and ensure a secure future for the youth. Promise 3, to eliminate foreign influence and destroy internal conspiracy. Sir, did his rallies and propaganda also play a role? Yes, a huge role. Hitler understood the power of rituals and spectacles. Spectacle is the visual drama that impressed people. He organized massive rallies and public meetings that you can see in figure number 8. So people felt everyone supports Hitler. Maybe I should also do. Red banners with swastika, figure 8 as you can see there, and the Nazi salute which was there in figure 7. See, I'll show you once again. This in figure 7 you can see how Hitler used to get salute, the Nazi salute that created strong symbols of loyalty and unity. Planned applause and cheering after every speech created emotional connection. Please, you can see in figure number 9 where people stand in perfect columns showing discipline and unity. This created a sense of belonging. People felt that they were part of a great mission to make Germany strong again. Because of such propaganda, people began to see Hitler as a messiah, a savior, a hero who would rescue them from pain. It worked because Germany's pride was completely broken. The people were desperate for hope and connection, and Hitler provided exactly that. Now, student, let's understand how Hitler destroyed Germany's democracy. Sir, when did Hitler get so much power? Kid, on 30th January 1933, President Hindenburg offered Hitler the chancellorship, the highest ministerial post in Germany. By then, the Nazis had gained the conservative support also. Even traditional politicians now backed Hitler's agenda. Sir, what was his first step after coming to power? The moment he got power, my child, he started dismantling democratic structures. He wanted only his ideas to dominate, no opposition, no criticism. And then came the Reichstag, that is the Parliament fire in February 1933, a fire in the German Parliament. This became Hitler's biggest excuse to destroy freedom. Immediately after the fire, the famous fire decree on 28th February 1933 was passed. It suspended freedom of speech, press and assembly, targeted communists and sent them to concentration camps. Out of 6,808 arrest files from Dusseldorf, 1,440 were communists. Sir, what were these concentration camps? Very good question, bache, and very important also. These were places where people were detained without legal processes, surrounded by electrified barbed wire fences so no one could escape. Mainly political opponents, minorities and undesirables were kept there to isolate and control them. Sir, were only communists targeted? No, bache, not at all. They were just one group. In total, 52 such groups, 52 categories of people were persecuted, means penalized across Germany. Then came the very famous Enabling Act, 3rd March 1933. A very important point to remember, bachcho. The famous Enabling Act on 3rd March 1933. This act then legally established the dictatorship in Germany. Hitler got rule by decree powers. He could make laws without parliament's consent. All political parties and trade unions were banned except for the Nazi party. The state took complete control over the economy, media, army and judiciary, all the pillars that economy is sustained by. Sir, what about law and order then? It was terrible, children. Apart from the regular police and SA, the stormtroopers, Hitler created special surveillance and security forces, Gestapo, secret state police, SS, protection squads, criminal police, SD, security service. These forces controlled and terrorized society. Sir, does that mean the same people who saw Hitler as a savior were no longer safe from him? Exactly, my child. Anyone could be taken to Gestapo, torture chambers, or concentration camps without any trial. The police ruled with total impunity. Impunity means they could do anything with no fear of punishment. That's why, students, history teaches us the value of vigilance, not only governments but by citizens too. Now, students, let's discuss about Hitler's reconstruction and foreign policy. Sir, how did Hitler fix the economy? Excellent question, my child. And thank you, I can see how engaged every one of you are. That's the beauty of learning history with Kumar, sir. Now to your question, Hitler appointed an economist named Helmuth and gave him two goals: full production and full employment. He started state-funded work creation programs. The famous projects were German superhighways and the Volkswagen People's Car. Wow, sir, the same Volkswagen we see in India today. Absolutely right. And you got it perfectly. Sir, what about his foreign policy? Hitler's quick successes made Germany extremely confident. 1933, he withdrew Germany from the League of Nations to escape its restrictions and rebuild the army. 1936, he reoccupied the Rhineland. 1938, he annexed Austria, raising the slogan, "One people, one empire, one leader." Later, he seized southern land, that is Czechoslovakia, saying, "The people there speak German, so they belong to us." Even England remained largely silent, believing that the Treaty of Versailles had been too harsh, so they allowed Hitler's aggressive expansion for a while. Sir, wasn't there a conflict between economy and military expansion? Excellent question. Sack advised Hitler not to invest too heavily in rearmament, building weapons and army, because the state was already running in deficit. But Hitler rejected his cautious approach. He decided war is the only way out. For more sources, territorial expansion was essential. And since Hitler couldn't tolerate anyone less aggressive than himself, Sack was dismissed from his post. Sir, then how did the war actually begin? In September 1939, my child, Germany invaded Poland, and that's what triggered war with France and England. But sir, Germany attacked Poland. Why did France and England jump in against Hitler? Very smart question. Germany attacked Poland to expand its territory, as you can see in figure 11. But here's the key. France and England had already signed mutual defense treaties with Poland. That meant if anyone attacked Poland, they would bound to help Poland and declare war on the attacker. And so, when Germany invaded Poland, it became the direct trigger for France and England to enter the war. Got it, sir? Then in September 1940, Germany signed the Tripartite Pact with Italy and Japan, making their alliance stronger and international influence wider. Across Europe, Hitler set up puppet regimes, government loyal to Nazis, run by leaders who obeyed him. By 1940, Hitler had become the most powerful leader in all of Europe. Sir, does that mean the whole of Europe was under Hitler's control? Not completely under his control, but yes, under his influence and fear. To gain full control, Hitler now aimed to conquer Eastern Europe. His goal was to secure territory and resources for the Germans so that every German would have enough food and living space. In June 1941, he made the historic blunder of attacking the Soviet Union, one of the most powerful nations of that time. Germany's Western Front was already exposed to British bombings, and now by opening the Eastern Front, Hitler faced the Soviet Red Army, a massive force. The Battle of Stalingrad turned into a disaster for Germany. They had to retreat all the way back to Berlin. This battle became one of the most famous turning points in world history. After that, Soviet dominance grew rapidly, and for the next 50 years, the USSR remained a superpower in Eastern Europe. Meanwhile, Germany, Italy, and Japan were still fighting on multiple fronts. Sir, but why did the USA enter the war? It was a European conflict, right? Brilliant question again, kid. Initially, USA didn't want to join World War II directly, but then Japan made a huge mistake. If it attacked the American naval base at Pearl Harbor, when the US heard about the attack and the heavy soldier casualties, America officially entered World War II. By then, the US had already developed world's first atomic bomb. At the time, at that time, no one knew the true power of atomic energy. When the USA wanted Japan to surrender, Japan completely ignored it and kept fighting. That became the biggest mistake in Japan's history now. Italy had already surrendered in 1943. Germany fell in May 1945. Hitler committed suicide on 30th April 1945. Still, Japan continued fighting. So, on 6th August 1945, USA dropped an atomic bomb on Hiroshima. And when Japan still didn't surrender, another atomic bomb was dropped on 9th August 1945 on Nagasaki. The result, around 1,40,000 people, which is nearly 20% of Hiroshima's population at that time, were killed. Just think about 20% of a city population getting killed in just a fraction of seconds by one single bomb, the atomic bomb. Around 70,000 died in Nagasaki, which constituted 28% of the city's population that time, and it was the most devastating attack in human history. Finally, Japan had to surrender and World War II officially ended. Germany's defeat is marked as the end of the World War in Europe, celebrated as VE Day, Victory in Europe Day, on 8th May 1945. Now students, look at figure 11. It shows the expansion of Nazi power in Europe by 1942. Territorial expansion. By 1942, Nazi Germany had conquered most of Europe. Countries under direct or indirect control included Poland, France, Norway, Belgium, Netherlands, Denmark, and parts of the Soviet Union. Vichy France. After France's defeat in 1940, the southern part became the Vichy regime, which collaborated with Nazi Germany. Occupation in the East. In 1941, Germany invaded the Soviet Union, Operation Barbarossa, and occupied large parts of Western USSR. Western Europe. Germany controlled Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg, Denmark, and Norway, strategic areas for resources and ports. Ideological goal. Nazi expansion aimed at achieving Lebensraum, living space for Germans. They achieved it. They persecuted and exterminated Jews, Slavs, and other undesirables. Military strategy. Germany used Blitzkrieg, the lightning war, for fast and surprising victories. By 1942, Germany has reached its maximum territorial expansion in Europe, as you can see, kids, in the map figure 11 on your screen. Figure 12 shows how Indian newspapers at that time reporting Hitler's rise in Nazi activities in Europe. This shows how even India and the rest of the world were closely following events in Germany, and people everywhere were deeply concerned. Students, someone rightly said, those who see themselves as the most powerful often become the biggest problem for the world. Sir, it's very true. Sir, I also agree. Sir, what is this term? Lebensraum? Excellent. And this is very important, child. Lebensraum means living space. Hitler believed Germany needed new territories to gain resources and power, and that settlers in those territories would keep Germany connected and strong. Sir, so Poland and eastern countries were his testing grounds. Exactly. Poland became his laboratory. When he first implemented his plans, he implemented those at Poland to concentrate Germans and spread his superior race. Sir, this feels like a real life horror story. You are right, my child. History reminds us how dangerous extreme ideologies and racism can be. Sir, any easy way to remember this? Yes. think about how Hitler mixed science with politics to manipulate people? A simple example, in your school, if a rule like everyone must wear ID cards is used correctly, it ensures safety. But if the same rule is misused by punishing a child so harshly for forgetting it that at that time the small rule turns into fear and injustice. History teaches us not to repeat mistakes but to learn from them. Those who wander in darkness must seek the light. Through the stories of history, we understand ourselves and learn. Wow, sir, that was amazing. So, students, remember, Nazism equals to extreme racism plus expansion plus misuse of science. That it changed the world forever. Nazism and Hitler's worldview. Sir, what does worldview mean? Good question. A worldview means a person's belief system, how they see the world and how they behave because of it. Hitler's worldview was deeply racist and extremely nationalist. Sir, racist means, according to Hitler and the Nazis, all human beings were not equal. They believed in a racial hierarchy. Some were superior, some inferior. At the top were the Aryans, blonde, blue-eyed Germans. At the bottom were the Jews, whom Hitler called the anti-race and enemies of Aryans. Other people, especially people of color, were ranked lower depending on their looks. Sir, how did they justify this? That's the shocking part, my child. Hitler used science as his excuse. Science, sir? Yes, beta. He twisted the theories of Charles Darwin and Herbert Spencer. Darwin, the biologist? Exactly. Darwin studied evolution and natural selection, how plants and animals survive by adapting. But Darwin never said this to apply to human society. The Nazism misused his ideas and said the strongest race will survive, the weak will perish. They considered Aryans the strongest race and believed they must dominate the world. Wonderful, sir. Great. Next, we will see an activity based on two sources, and then we'll see how this ideology was implemented through political power. Source A. In this source, Hitler says that the earth is not a gift for anyone. He believed that only brave, strong and hardworking people to deserve to live on it and control it. According to him, strong nations have the right to expand their land to match their growing population. So, Hitler used this idea to justify war and conquest, saying that it was natural and right for powerful countries to take more land. Source B, students, you can see on the screen. Source B repeats the same belief that small countries cannot become world powers. Hitler thought that the nation needed more land and resources to be powerful. He felt that Germany was too small and must conquer other territories to become a great world power. In short, territorial expansion was, in his view, necessary and justified. Now we have an activity, kids. You can see on the screen related to source A and B. What sources A and B tells us? Hitler believed strong nations had the right to conquer land to increase their power. He justified war and expansion as something natural and necessary for Germany's survival and strength. What Mahatma Gandhiji would have said? Gandhiji would have completely disagreed with Hitler. He believed in non-violence, peace and truth. According to Gandhiji, real strength comes from doing what is right, not from fighting or controlling others. Topic we have on the screen, kids, as establishment of the racial state. Students, once the Nazis came to power, they began turning their dream into reality, a dream of creating a society made up of only pure Germans, the so-called Nordic Aryans. Sir, what did they mean by pure Germans? Good question. According to Hitler, only those who were strong, healthy and of pure Aryan blood were considered true Germans. Anyone who was weak, sick or physically or mentally unfit had no right to live. Sir, what happened to such people? Under the euthanasia program, many Germans who were mentally or physically unfit were killed. Hitler's officials believed such people were a burden on society and did not deserve to survive. Sir, were only Germans targeted? No, beta, not just the Germans. The Nazis also called many other groups undesirable. You can see on the screen as well, the details are being given. For example, gypsies, black people, Russians and Poles were seen as racially inferior. When Germany occupied Poland and parts of Russia, civilians were forced to work as slaves. Many died of hunger, starvation and exhaustion, being completely exhausted. And what about the Jews, sir? The Jews suffered the most. For centuries in Europe, they had been unfairly blamed for killing Christ and were often forced to live in separate areas called ghettos. But Hitler's hatred went far beyond that. He used false scientific ideas to claim that Jews were a separate, inferior race. He said the Jewish problem could only be solved through their complete elimination. From 1933 to 1938, the Nazis terrorized, impoverished, and isolated Jews, forcing many to leave Germany. Between 1939 and 1945, they were gathered in ghettos and later killed in gas chambers, especially in Poland. So, sir, this is what they meant by the racial state. Exactly. The Nazis wanted to build a racial state, a society where only pure Aryans could live and prosper, and everyone else was removed or killed. Now, bachcho, the next topic on your screen is the racial utopia. Once the war began, Hitler and the Nazis tried to make their racial dream come true. They wanted to create what they called a racial utopia, a perfect world filled only with pure Aryans. Sir, what does racial utopia mean? It means a so-called perfect world based on race built in reality. It was a world built through violence and murder. For Hitler, genocide, mass killing and war were two sides of the same coin. What did he do first, sir? When Germany conquered Poland, it was divided up. The northwestern part of Poland was added to Germany. Polish people were forced to leave their homes and property. Their houses were then given to ethnic Germans brought from other occupied countries. The remaining Polish people were sent like cattle to an area called the General Government, where all undesirables of the Nazi Empire were kept. What happened to the educated people there, sir? The Polish intelligentsia, teachers, writers, and leaders were killed in large numbers so that the rest of the population would remain weak and obedient. Sir, what about children? Children who looked Aryan, fair skin, blue eyes, blonde hair, were taken from their mothers and given to German families to be raised as pure Aryans or pure Germans. Those who didn't look fit to be Aryans were sent to orphanages, where most of them died from hunger and disease. That's so cruel, sir. Exactly, beta. It was one of the cruelest acts in history. The general government area had the largest ghettos and gas chambers, which became the main killing centers for Jews and other desirables. So, sir, Hitler's racial utopia was actually a world of death. Yes, beta. What Hitler called a perfect world was in reality built on suffering, destruction, and the death of millions. It was not an utopia, it was a nightmare. Bachcho, now we have an activity over the screen. You can see the first part, citizenship, French Revolution in Nazism. Citizenship means being a member of a country where people have rights, responsibilities, and the freedom to take part in public life. During the French Revolution, citizenship was based on the ideas of equality, liberty, and fraternity, which is brotherhood. All adult men were given equal political rights. They could vote, take part in public decisions, discussions, and the state was responsible for protecting their freedom. It was about inclusion and fairness. Everyone was considered an equal citizen of the nation. In Nazi Germany, the idea of citizenship completely changed. The Nazis said that only people of pure Aryan blood were real Germans. Jews, Gypsies, and other minority groups were not treated as citizens even. They were excluded from schools, jobs, and even public places. Citizenship depended on race and royalty to Hitler, not on being part of the nation by law. People who were not racially pure lost their rights and were treated as outsiders. So, while the French Revolution promoted equal citizenship for all, Nazism created unequal citizenship based on race and obedience. The second part, Nuremberg laws and other legal measures. In 1935, the Nazis passed the Nuremberg laws which took away Jews' German citizenship. These laws also banned marriages and relationships between Jews and non-Jews. Jews were no longer allowed to vote, hold government jobs, or enjoy civil rights. Other unfair rules followed. Jews were separated from others in schools, parks, and public places, not allowed to work in many jobs or run businesses, forced to carry special identity cards and wear a yellow Star of David, made to give up their homes and property and live in crowded ghettos. All these measures made Jews and other targeted groups feel so isolated, much unwanted, and completely powerless. The laws made discrimination legal, and this system of hate led directly to mass persecution and genocide during the Holocaust. बच्चों, you have steps to death. Sir, may I summarize stage 1? Of course, go ahead. Sir, stage 1 says exclusion 1933 to 1939. Jews were denied citizenship and all basic rights. Marriages between Jews and Germans were made illegal. Their businesses were boycotted, jobs taken away, properties confiscated. On the night of broken glass, Kristallnacht, Jewish shops, houses, and synagogues were destroyed. Figure 15 and 16, public spaces and resorts were marked for Aryans only. Perfect. Sir, can I explain stage 2? Go ahead. Stage 2 is of ghettoization 1940 to 1944. Jews were forced to wear the yellow Star of David and moved into ghettos like those in Lodz and Warsaw. Inside there was starvation, disease, and poverty. They had to surrender all their money and property before being moved. Figure 17. This is all I have to sell, showing the misery and helplessness of Jewish families. Absolutely, beta. Brilliant. Sir, can I explain stage 3? Of course, go ahead. Stage 3 is of annihilation 1941 onwards. Jews were taken from ghettos to death factories like Auschwitz and Treblinka by trains. Mass killings were done using gas chambers and live electric enclosures. Figure 18. Those trying to escape were executed can be seen. Figure 19 and 22 shows their clothes, shoes, and personal belongings that all were taken away. And in figure 20 and 21 we can see the camps look peaceful in photos but were actually sites of horrific suffering from within. Very well explained, my dear. So kids, in short, the Nazis excluded and isolated and finally exterminated the Jews and all undesirables. At each stage they were stripped of their rights, property, and human dignity, leaving them completely helpless and completely controlled. The next topic, students, we have about the youth in Germany, mainly how Hitler controlled the youth. Now students, we will discuss how Hitler turned German youth into his most powerful weapon, controlling not just their lives but their minds as well. Hitler was obsessed with youth. He believed that if children were indoctrinated early, they would grow up loyal and obedient to Nazi ideology. If I talk about real example, imagine if in your school only one political idea was taught, no other views, no debates, no choice. If all books, sports, and lessons promoted only one belief system, would that be fair? No, sir, not at all. Then students would stop thinking freely. Their minds would be caged and narrow. Exactly, my child. That's what happened under Nazism. Schools were cleansed and purified. Teachers who were Jewish or politically unreliable were dismissed. Children were segregated. Jews sat separately, played separately. Undesirable children, Jews, gypsies, disabled kids were removed from schools, and later many were sent to gas chambers. Textbooks were rewritten to teach racial science and Nazi superiority. Even math problems carried racist examples. Students were trained to be loyal, tough, and heartless, to hate Jews and worship Hitler. Sports were used to develop violence and aggression. Boxing was encouraged to make boys iron hearted. Youth organizations. Young Walk for boys up to 13 years old. Hitler Youth for boys aged 14 and above. There they learned to glorify war and violence, to reject democracy, to hate undesirables. At 18, every boy had to join labor service and then the army. In 1922, the first youth league of Nazis was formed. By 1926, it was renamed Hitler Youth, and all other independent youth organizations were banned. Imagine, students, if every school and club in your country was forced under one ideology, no freedom, no questioning, only obedience. That's how Germany became a nation of followers, not thinkers. Students, history so teaches us when childhood and education are misused, it can destroy entire generations. Very true, sir. Absolutely, I agree, sir. But on the next screen, you can see figure 23, which is of a classroom. Children were taught racial hatred using propaganda books like Der Gefliss, the poisonous mushroom. They were told lies. For example, Jews have crooked noses like the number 6 to make them hate Jews. It shows how schools were used as weapons to control young minds. Figure 24 on the screen, kids. Expelled Jewish teacher and students. A Jewish teacher and her students are being expelled while others laugh. This shows how Nazi policies enforced anti-Jewish discrimination and public humiliation. Now, kids, we have an activity on the next screen. If I were a student in that class, I would feel sad and confused watching people treated unfairly just for being Jewish. How do you feel? Sir, I would also feel very angry and guilty being forced to believe lies about others and about stereotypes. Sir, stereotypes come from family, friends, and media, not real experience. When we repeat them without thinking, prejudice and discrimination grow. Absolutely. The reflection is we must think critically, question stereotypes, and treat everyone with fairness and respect. Source C. Now we can see, kids, on the screen. It says indoctrination starts early. Boys aged 6 to 10 were trained in Nazi ideology. At the end, they took an oath of loyalty, promising their life and energy to Hitler. Source D. Robert Lay's statement. Children were indoctrinated from age 3. Flags, schools, Hitler Youth, military, and labor service. Every stage of life was controlled. They were never allowed to be free. In figure 27, we can see a very painful experience, students. Jewish children being taken away. Children were sent to death camps where they were gassed. Student, you can see what's happening in this image. Sir, I can see and I can't believe the kids are crying. Yes, my child, they were crying because they were terrified and helpless, feeling hatred for a man they could never even understand. We are blessed, students, to live in a world free from such horror. Truly, sir, very true. In figure 25, we can see desirable children. These were the children Hitler wanted, pure Aryan, loyal to Nazi ideals. Figure 26, German-blooded mothers and infants. German women and babies were taken to annexed areas like Poland to settle there. A day in my life, September 1941. That's an activity where it's actually a DIY activity. Still, I've given a sample. I can just read it out. Like if it was a day in my life in September 1941. Today I woke up feeling anxious as I do every day since the new law was passed. The yellow star of devil's stitch on my chest burns with shame and fear. People stare, whisper and laugh as I am not a human. At school, I sit separately. Teachers ignore me. Friends avoid me. I saw entire families being dragged to camps. Their screams still echo in my ears. Even home isn't safe anymore. Any moment, Nazis might knock on our door. Every night I silently pray, maybe tomorrow life will be safe again. The hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. This means the hands that raise a child, the mothers shape the future of society. If a mother is strong and value driven, her children become good citizens. But in Hitler's Germany, this line took a dark twist. Students, now we will discuss two topics: the Nazi cult of motherhood and the art of propaganda. Sir, what does cult of motherhood mean? Good question. In Nazi Germany, children were taught that boys and girls had very different roles. Boys had to be strong, tough and steel-hearted. Girls had to become good mothers and give birth to pure Aryan children. Sir, so did Hitler respect women or control them? Hitler once said, "In my state, the mother is the most important citizen." But the truth was, only Aryan mothers were respected because they produced racially desirable babies. They were given special privileges, better hospital treatment, discounts in shops and theaters, reduced train fares, and even honor crosses. Bronze Cross on production or giving birth to 4 children, Silver Cross giving birth to 6 children, and Gold Cross giving birth to 8 or more. Sir, what about Aryan women who broke these rules? They were publicly humiliated, heads shaved, faces blackened, and paraded with a sign reading, "I have sullied the honor of the nation." Just imagine how degrading that must have been. Very true, sir. Very humiliating. Students, here's a fun trick to remember these crosses. Like if you need to remember 4, 6, 8 for bronze, silver and gold, you can take it as 4 brinjals, 6 samosas and 8 gulab jamuns, B for bronze, S for silver and G for gold. Just a funny trick for you, the way you wish you can remember. The next topic is of the art of propaganda. Sir, how did they use propaganda? Excellent question. Propaganda was the Nazis' most dangerous weapon. They never used words like kill or murder. Instead, they disguised their crimes with new terms: final solution, mass killing of Jews, euthanasia, murder of disabled people, evacuation, sending people to gas chambers called disinfection areas with fake showerheads. But sir, how did people believe all this? Through massive media manipulation, my kids. Posters, slogans, films, radio, everything was used. Jews were shown as rats and vermin. Films like The Eternal Jew portrayed them as monsters. Socialists and liberals were called weak or foreign agents. So basically, they controlled people's minds. Exactly. Nazism played with emotions, hatred, anger, fear, all aimed at Jews and undesirables. It was a psychological weapon that poisoned the entire society. My God, sir, thank we are not living in that era. Truly, bachcho. Now we can see source E on the screen, which says Hitler said women shouldn't interfere in men's world. Men show courage on battlefields. Women show it through pain and sacrifice in childbirth. Every birth, he said, was like a battle for the survival of the race. Source F says, where Hitler believed women were the stable element of the race, responsible for its continuation. They must protect racial purity as if chosen by nature and God to do so. Now again we have an activity on the screen, kids, of where as a Jewish woman and as a non-Jewish woman you have to speak about your experience. As a Jewish woman, first, I would feel deep fear and anger because Hitler's laws were designed to hurt and discriminate only against my community. Watching families and friends being publicly insulted or deported, I would feel helpless and anxious about the future. I would try to protect my family, hide my identity, and hope to somehow escape the persecution. As a non Jewish German woman, I would also feel pressure to follow Hitler's rules because Nazi propaganda constantly glorified women as mothers of the Aryan race. Some women might have genuinely believed in this idea, but others must have felt trapped, confined to domestic and reproductive roles only. In simple words, Jewish women lived in constant fear for survival, while non Jewish German women carried the burden of propaganda and limited freedom. We can now learn about Nazi propaganda against Jews. Kids, you can see on the screen figure 28, a very important topic. This was a Nazi propaganda poster that portrayed Jews as greedy and criminal. It spread the false message that Jews worship money and were dishonest, committing crimes to gain wealth. Such posters were used to fill ordinary German minds with hatred and fear, justifying discrimination and violence. This shows how propaganda can manipulate public opinion and make lies appear like truth. Now we have an activity on the screen as well. This poster tried to depict Jews as greedy and dishonest, suggesting they would commit crimes for money. The main goal was to create fear and hatred and to justify their persecution. Now on the screen, kids, we have the propaganda for other groups. Figure 29, peasants. This leaflet targeted peasants, promising them protection, land and stability. Nazis projected themselves as defenders of rural life to gain their support. Figure 30 of workers, it states the Hitler as a frontline soldier, a hero who understood workers' struggles. It encouraged them to vote for Hitler as a strong people's leader. Now we have an activity. What these figures tells us. Nazi propaganda was carefully designed for each social group. It used images, slogans and emotions, not facts. Hitler and his party were shown as heroes and saviors of Germany. How Nazis mobilized society. Sir, may I tell the answer? Yes, of course. Sir, peasants in figure 29 promised land stability and ruler security, and the figure 30 of workers says depicted Hitler as a soldier leader who cared for them. Very good. Bravo. Overall, we can say propaganda created loyalty and blind support for Nazi ideology. Now, bachcho, we have the data of dates and events being simplified for you. We can also remember a funny trick like always, never jump, just stop, just jump, don't jump madly. Sir, what's that? It's a tricky trick for you to remember in a simplified form. You can just take the initial letters of this statement and can figure out with always as the first letter A for August, never the N as November, J for jump for June, J for just for June again, S for stop for September, like this. So always, never jump, just stop, just jump, don't jump madly. August 1, 1914, World War I starts, Germany enters the war. November 9, 1918, Germany surrenders, Weimar Republic begins. June 28, 1919, Treaty of Versailles signed, Germany fined. January 30, 1933, Hitler becomes Chancellor. September 1, 1939, Germany invades Poland, World War II begins. June 22, 1941, Germany attacks the Soviet Union. June 23, 1941, mass murder of Jews begins. December 8, 1941, USA joins the war. January 27, 1945, Auschwitz liberated. May 8, 1945, VE Day, Germany surrenders. Funny form I can say, in August, Germany said, let's fight, 1914. November, okay, we surrender and start a new republic, 1918. Next June, oh no, the Versailles fine is huge, 1919. January 1933, Hitler shouted, now I am the boss. September 1939, Poland attacked, war began again. June 1941, attack on the Soviet Union, and the next day, tragedy for the Jews began. December 1941, USA joined the war saying enough. January 1945, Auschwitz freed, and by 1945, May, Germany finally surrendered after Hitler's suicide. But on the next screen, you can see ordinary people and the crimes against humanity. Today, we will talk about how ordinary Germans reacted to the Nazi regime and the horrors of the Holocaust in this topic. So, did all Germans support Nazis? No, some actively resisted, like Pastor Niemöller, but most of them were silent spectators. Many thought in Nazi language and ideas. When they saw Jews or undesirables, they felt hatred and fear. Some even marked houses or reported neighbors. Many truly believed Nazism was bringing prosperity back to Germany. So people stayed silent just to protect themselves. Exactly. As Pastor Niemöller said, first they came for the communists, then they came for the Jews, and when they came for me, there was no one left to stand up for me. Now kids, you can see on the next screen, box 1, Voices of Ordinary Germans. Historian Lawrence Rees interviewed Germans who lived under Nazi rule. One teenager, Erna Kranz, remembered the 1930s as a hopeful time, not only for the unemployed but for many, because Germany seemed to recover. Salaries rose, jobs returned, and life felt stable again. This shows how, while Nazi policies harmed millions, some ordinary Germans feel benefited. That's why many didn't speak about against the victims. Now we have an activity on the screen, kids. When Erna Kranz said, I could only say for myself, she meant her experience was personal and not universal. Some Germans accepted or supported Nazis for economic reasons, while others suffered deeply. The next screen, we can see acts of courage and resistance. Figure 31, Warsaw Ghetto residents. Ordinary Jews secretly collected documents, diaries, and evidence of Nazi crimes. They hid them in milk cans and containers buried underground in 1943. In 1950, one can was found, proof of their bravery and foresight to preserve history. Figure 32, we can see kids, Danish rescue boats. Danish citizens secretly helped Jews escape to Sweden, a neutral country. It was a rescue operation, but it saved thousands of lives, showing that even in darkness, resistance and solidarity existed. Courage is not the absence of fear, it's the triumph over it. Now on the next screen, you can see the topic, knowledge about the Holocaust. Students, do you know when the world actually discovered the Holocaust? Sir, did people already know during the war? No, the truth came out only in the final years of World War II. Before that, most of the world was totally unaware. After the war, diaries, letters, and reports revealed the atrocities. Germans themselves were busy recovering from destruction, but Jews wanted the world to remember. Example, prisoners secretly kept diaries and notes. One ghetto inhabitant wrote, I just want to live long enough to tell the world what happened. Even as defeat approached, Nazis tried to destroy all the evidences, burning files and buildings. But today, Holocaust memory lives through museums, memoirs, poetry, and films. The next topic, what Jews felt in Nazi Germany. Carolette Bird secretly recorded Jewish dreams under Nazi rule, later published as the Third Reich of Dreams. In those dreams, Jews saw themselves as the caricatures Nazis portrayed, with hooked nose, dark eyes, and fearful gestures. Propaganda had invaded even their subconscious minds. They suffered not only physically but psychologically, losing identity and dignity long before death. Dreams, deportations, disease, every part of life was filled with terror. This shows how Holocaust trauma wasn't just visible, it lived inside people's hearts and minds. On the next screen, kids, now you can see in box 2 Mahatma Gandhi's letter to Hitler. Let us look at something truly inspiring, a letter from Mahatma Gandhi to Adolf Hitler. Sir, why did Gandhiji hesitate to write him? Because he feared it might seem impertinent, rude, or intrusive, but he felt it was his moral duty also. In the letter, Mahatma Gandhi wrote that Hitler had the power to stop a war that could destroy humanity. He asked, "Are you ready to risk the suffering of millions for your political ambitions?" He reminded Hitler of non-violence and moral alternatives to war. Summary, we can say Mahatma Gandhi's letter reflected his faith in humanity, morality, and peace. Box 3 that you can see on the screen, kids. Gandhiji's on non-violence versus Hitler. Mahatma Gandhi said non-violence is do or die, but it never kills, it transforms. He warned that violence brings only destruction, not victory. He criticized Hitler's cruelty and appealed for peace and compassion. Did Hitler ever reply to Gandhiji? Sadly bitter. Hitler ignored Gandhiji letters, continuing his wars and aggression. Historians say he dismissed Gandhiji ideas because he believed only in force and not moral power. To conclude, students, children, this chapter is not just about history, it's about humanity. Just to have the concluding lines, history tells of courage and fear, of voices silenced that we must hear. Remember the past, the pain, the strife, stand for humanity, protect every life. When injustice knocks and cruelty calls, let compassion rise and silence fall. So students, I hope you liked today's video. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe so that knowledge reaches everyone. And yes, press that bell icon for instant updates. You are watching Social by Kumar. Padho smart, socho smart, Kumar sir ke saath. See you kids in the next video. Till then, take care and God bless.